Before we start on the next section, somebody was just telling me that, I don't know where she went, that in their exercise class, they talk about intense stretching at the end of their intense exercise, which is what I was just saying. Basically, if it's light exercise, light stretching when you get through, a little bit warming up, obviously, as you start. You want heat moving in your body, and they may do it through kind of walking and different kinds of things to help that happen. But intense stretching is usually done after intense exercise. I did not really go through this. I need to back up. One thing I left out was the walking. There's three different ways probably to walk. I mean, you said, well, walking's walking. Normally, you want to actually move the opposite hand to the opposite arm. And I think we're going to do this in a minute if you'll stand back up, because I think we're all right on time. And what we're going to do in a moment is you're going to walk out and we're going to walk around, so we'll just follow you that way. We're going to go in this circle, which would be, that's counterclockwise. Hold a minute. Wait. Don't go yet. Now, when you're walking, you can go, you should be either coming this much with your opposite arm. That's the way God is designed to keep us balanced. Otherwise, if you're walking unbalanced. You're looking like, I don't know, some kind of something. I don't know. What? Yeah. A what? Anyway, but there's other things. I mean, some people talk about intense stretching where they really swing those arms like this right here. Okay, that's good. Of course, then there's the professional way. Now, I've had this lady, a trainer down in Atlanta, and she loves to take the whole class time, not really, but a lot of it, so that you'll do it exactly the way the book says, which might mean that this arm would be parallel to the ground, and this hand would be just like this, and so you really do it correctly. That's true, but I don't like to waste a lot of time on that, because in a lot of cases we just simply need to walk a little bit. Now, the other factor is the breathing, and this is hard to do when you're talking, but we really should be able to breathe and walk at the same time. Now, what I do when I'm running, and Pastor and I were talking, because he runs too, is I concentrate on breathing out when I'm running, because I know if I breathe out, I got to breathe in. And so I try to have a good, steady, deep breathing. Now, this is rhythmic. It's the same, but what I'm saying is I want to be able to go instead of gasping for breath. And so what I want you to do, though, is see, if you got the opposite arm going, and I want you to practice your breathing at the same time. I want you to see if you're going, breathe out through your mouth, through your nose. Fill up your lungs. See, don't take little short breaths. We are very poor breathers as human beings. We take a lot of shallow breaths, sitting all day at desk and things like that. Exercise makes you deep breathe, and that's very important. Matter of fact, if you go to the hospital, somebody said they've been an x-ray technician, but one of the things they will also do is find out how much oxygen you're getting in your cells. And you might be surprised. We got this little thing at the office you can test and breathe into. Well, the average person can breathe about 350, I think, on that scale. Now, Andrew may have left, but he set the highest at our conference office of about 600 and something. And so people, if you run like I do, I can usually get about 6 or 650 or something on there. So you're, again, going to have a higher oxygen level as you run. All right, let's see if we can just kind of follow each other around, but don't get too close. Make sure you can swing your arms whatever way you want to swing them. I don't care. Let's go ahead and lead this way. But practice breathing. Don't talk. See if you're breathing deep and slow breathing while you're doing it, okay? Just concentrate on your breathing. Swing your arms a little bit. The opposite arm ought to go out with the opposite foot. Don't just swing them. Now, high heels, I don't know how y'all even walk, much less do it right. In most cases, you don't have to think about it. You probably have already been doing it for 50 years or something. Concentrate on your breathing, in and out deeply, deeply. He can swing his arms a little more up there. Don't be lazy. You might want to shorten up your arms to do it like this. If there's not enough room, you can do your arms this way, okay? So, so you don't hit somebody. Are you taking good, deep breaths? Okay, when you get back around, you can stop. Becky looks like she's staggering. I don't know for what. Okay, very good. When you get back around, we'll just stop. Atta girl. Now we're looking better. Here we go. Okay, do we have any questions about exercise? That's how important I feel like it is, because like I said, if there's one thing we don't, we hear stuff, but any questions? Okay, I hope you set realistic goals. Realistic goals. Yes, ma'am.
I had a question back a little bit about the cholesterol level, the HDL.
Yeah.
Does it make a difference if your HDL is pretty high and your LDL is lower? Does that make a difference in your total cholesterol count in terms of it being better?
Yes. HDL is always better. You get it about 50, you're doing much better. The LDL is what you want to watch.
Yeah, but did you mean, though, in relation to the total cholesterol?
Yeah, because mine was kind of high, 189. My doctor says, I'm not too worried about your cholesterol because your HDL is so high. So does it make up the part of the total, or does it not?
Yeah, it does. But the point is, the total really.
It's still the total.
It's still the total, but that's why it can be misleading a little bit too. The HDL, LDL is usually the bigger factor. And remember what I said? The ratio is what they actually claim is the biggest factor, even over the total cholesterol. That is the ratio if you divided the high into the low.
Yes.
The ratio, like if it gets to 5.5 and 6, and there has been a time in my life, even though I was exercising, that my ratio was still high, even though my cholesterol was real low and I exercised. And, the doctors can only say, well, that shows the stress factor, and that type of thing. But sometimes there's no answer. But the high ratio, I can remember seeing mine where it said I was in the most, like a high-risk area for heart attack, because my ratio was like 6.0. It's really not supposed to be over 5.5 on the ratio. So that's actually a bigger indicator than just your total cholesterol. Usually, though, the total cholesterol is probably telling you how you're really eating. I mean, if you're eating a lot of meat and a high product, you know what I'm saying. But he said it right. If HDL is high, then that's what you want. That's why it's called the good cholesterol. Any other questions? I thought there was one back here somewhere.
I want to know if weight training would be the same, would be good too, heavy weights.
Well, okay, I mentioned weight training a little bit in regard to I said strength training. I didn't say weight training. The strength training is what I was talking about. Here's the thing about the strength training. If you use bigger and heavier weights, you will build bigger muscles. The problem with that is, if you don't, and a lot of athletes have this problem, they lift weights until they finish playing in sports, and now they've got all these habits and they've got all this weight, and what's going to happen if they stop exercising? There's going to be some serious problems usually. In most of our cases, we don't need a lot of big muscles. Now, you're real strong, and it depends on your work. I mean, if you're lifting somewhere, my brother is in construction, and he's one of the strongest guys I've ever seen, and he has maintained that. He lifted weights when he was young. I do it, but I don't do it for big muscles, because there's no reason at my age that I need a lot of big muscles, but I just want them to be. You can feel my arm here, and I'm just saying, it feels pretty good, doesn't it? Well, yeah. From age, that's all I need. But I don't know. If you're older, I really don't see any need in real heavy weights.
All right, would that work, though, for building up would that be as good as walking and all that?
Oh, okay, now those are two different things. That's why I had two different categories. Cardiovascular is cardiovascular. The strength training, sure, it's a factor, but it's more muscular. That's why it's called anaerobic versus aerobic. Aerobic exercises use oxygen directly in the exercise in the cells. Anaerobic does not. I don't know if that helps. Okay? All right, we're now going to go to the next section, which is water. And this is one that sometimes there's some missed things on, so let's just take a look at it. We'll look at it very quickly. Some of you will keep helping me read. The first part of here tells us that 60% of our body weight is water. Our brain is 70%. Lungs, 90%. And it points out that water, of course, is a cleansing agent. Now, let's take a look at this a little bit. This is the World Health Organization statistics, and this differs from what we've always heard. Now, we've said this for a long time, that we need how many glasses of water a day? We've heard this for I don't know how long. We've heard 8. Have you ever thought about that? If I weighed 200 and he weighed 100, we need the same amount of water? That doesn't even make sense. And yet we've kind of thought that way. Did you get your 8 glasses of water today? I had mine, Well, obviously, the bigger we are and the heavier, the more water we need, and vice versa. Now, the World Health Organization, now this is the kind of research that's in your magazine, the Amazing Health magazine that's in there, that you have it. I told you I can't cover everything, so we're just giving you some of the highlights. And the important thing here is to drink enough water. And they have come up with a calculation that men on the average need 12 8-ounce glasses. And women, as you can see, 9. But again, that's going to vary according to your size. If it's a man weighs 100 and a lady weighs 200, then that's going to change, okay? Now, let's see here.
The general rule of thumb is
Okay.
half our body weight in ounces.
Okay, did you hear that? You weigh 200 pounds, and that means you need 10 ounces of water. There is another strong indicator. What is it? Urine. Yeah, color of your urine. Most of the time. Now, there are exceptions to that. You could have medicine or herbs that could still color the urine. But generally speaking, the more water you drink of what you need, your urine's going to be almost clear. And if it's dark yellow or dark orange or something, you're probably getting close to what theirs. And again, it depends on whether you're taking herbs or other medicine, but that's just something you need to be aware of. So, I usually tell my little secret, and so some of the kids, they left. I must have chased them off finally. I picked on them too long, but Andrew and Shayla. But what I do, and I did it this morning at about 4:30, I guess, and that is I generally drink about 10 ounces of water with lemon early in the morning. And I squeeze the lemons, and sometimes with my hands I squeeze them, or I have a little squeezer. But I also know that I've done it so long, I know how many swallows are in that I'm going to take in that total drink of water. It's going to be right at 22 swallows. You say, well, so who cares? Well, you go out here to this water fountain. Have you ever thought of how many swallows you take at a water fountain like this out here? I mean, we go by and we take a few sips and said, well, I took some water. So what I do at the conference office, we have these little cups, and I know that in those little cups, I'm taking 4 swallows per cup. So if I want to get my 22 swallows, I'm going to have to take about 5 cups of that water if I don't have a bottle of water with me or something. So even though I laugh at it, and of course at the conference office, if I'm drinking, somebody may come along and say, 10, 15, 20. They're trying to confuse me because they know I'm counting my cups of water. Analyze your own self. That's easy to do. We've talked today about analyzing how much fiber you're getting, how much carbohydrates you're getting, how much protein you're getting. Throw this in also of how much water you're getting. Now, yes, there's water in orange juice. There's water in milk, and there's water in a lot of things. You would be better off looking at this from a pure water standpoint, okay? I usually get the question about things like Gatorade, some of these things. Gatorade's pretty well been proven to be certainly replenish. One of the problems in sweating, and I love to sweat, it's just a man thing, I guess, when running and that type of thing, and I'm sure David does the same way, and that is you do have to be careful with replacing the electrolytes. You can get yourself into trouble, and you can get dehydrated. We're going to see this statistic right now about the importance. Look at this. What does it say? 75% of Americans are dehydrated. That means out of this group right now, basically from this group over, you people are all dehydrated, and this would only be the group that's not, statistically speaking. Now, I don't know who really are the dehydrated ones in here. You know, maybe we're all perfect. But that's an interesting statistic. And look at the next statistic. Look at this one. Read it.
37% mistake thirst for hunger.
Oh, I am so thirsty. You know, and then I really think, man, I'm really hungry. So I'm going to go get something to eat. Well, that makes the problem worse. Because in relation to your body now, you've got more food and you're needing more liquid, and you've just got, you see how we keep going? You see why it's not an accident of how we don't feel good? And we feel bad. I mean, think of all the things we've talked to. I showed them the thing about eating between meals, and we've looked at all these other statistics. And when you watch the film in a few minutes, he will get your attention even more than I'm doing on some of these things. Okay? Interesting statistic, and this is simple to analyze. You know, and you're going to ask me, somebody, I'm waiting, well, is it better to drink bottled water? Well, you know, whether the bottled water is really pure or not, I don't know. It'd be obviously better if we had some beautiful clear springs, but most of us don't have those. You know, you can just analyze that however you want. And I took that away from somebody. Chlorine that's in the water and some of these things. You know, I don't have time to get into that discussion today. Our thing here is, and by the way, let's look at this statistic. I didn't go over this. Dehydration, here are some of the things that could happen. This is something that has been a problem for me in the past because I thought I drank enough water. But when I was running for 45 minutes to an hour in the summertime, you know, I kind of forget that I'm old. And, you know, and I thought I could go run, and I started having these headaches. And I simply did not realize until one day I was down doing a basketball camp in Macon, Georgia. And I ran when the temperature was about 100 degrees. And I don't know if you've ever started on that road. It goes from the intersection up, but it's uphill almost all the way. It's the only time in my life that I really believe I got myself into trouble because I literally had to go into a motel there and get some water because I just was being stupid. I mean, that's the only was to it. After I got some water, I was able to go continue running okay. But you can, you know, your body is going to tell you the truth if you just listen to it and watch it. You know, headaches, dehydration, I mean, the dehydrated eyes, fatigue, and you can see the other things, okay? Look at the amount of processing your kidneys do. Look at that statistic. Isn't that amazing what God has made? 200 quarts of blood every day of cleansing. It's amazing. And so again, stop and think about it. If we're drinking a lot of soft drinks and a lot of milk and a lot of things that our body doesn't really need. Now, you said, what did you say? I have had non-Seventh-day Adventist doctors basically tell you that adults really do not need milk. Now, we're going to talk, you know, the film he's going to talk about calcium and phosphorus. But if we're having balanced ways of eating, we really do not need, you know, milk. And if it is, obviously it ought to be something like soy milk or something and not even a lot of that. But the soft drinks, do y'all realize that the average American now is drinking 4 to 5 soft drinks a day? 20 fluid ounces a day of soft drinks. When the last time I taught in public school, which was a number of years ago, but I used to run research, and kids even then were drinking about 4 or 5 soft drinks and virtually no milk, no orange juice or nothing like that. We're talking about elementary age kids. And a lot of these drinks have stuff in it that not only kills your appetite for good food and all of these things, there are some negative effects on your body. So you just really need to be careful with all this, okay? This shows heart disease and water. Similar statistics probably in some ways. This is the indicator. You can see some of the amounts of water. Not dramatically different, but some difference. And I don't know if there's anything here that we... this just says that water reduced the risk of fatal coronary heart attack by 40 to 50%. That's an interesting statistic. I don't know, though, if that was done in connection with somebody who was exercising. I don't know that it says that on the study. This is bladder cancer, and of course, this is exactly what I was talking about with Dane Griffin earlier. Again, notice that none of these statistics are 100%. But like I said, the very first opening speech, David, was that I talked about that these are all indicators of how we can do better, but it doesn't mean we're perfect, and it doesn't mean we're not going to have a heart attack. It doesn't mean these things. But the one that struck me, though, and you'll hear it on the film in a few minutes, is that on the famous Framing Heart heart study, not one person with a heart attack whose cholesterol was under 150. That is interesting when they found none, and that was a gigantic test. Very interesting statistic. Okay, I think I'm going to go on here. This is all in your magazine there. You can look at it. Let's talk about sunshine, because here is one of the new things we hear everybody talking about now, and that's vitamin D. I mean, you know, we've been talking about vitamin D for a long time, but in the last few years it's really come up, and look at this. Somebody read that.
90% of Americans are deficient in vitamin D.
God has created vitamin D from the sunshine for our body. Our body has a chemical called melatonin, and it activates with the skin to create and convert vitamin D into your body. Amazing invention God did. You know, when you start looking at how he did things scientifically, he created light, which we see as important. In a few minutes, I want to talk to you about darkness, just the opposite, and how the two interrelate with each other. But here it's vitamin D, and it says 90% of Americans are deficient in it. Now we've heard about vitamin D1, D2, and D3. You know, it's getting to be even more than it used to be. But notice here what it says. It helps protect against high blood pressure, osteoporosis, and heart disease. I want to show you more on this. How much do we need a day? What does it say there?
30 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week.
30 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week. Now, darker skin needs more because of the way it absorbs there. Stop and think about this. If you live in Atlanta, if you've ever been through Atlanta on a clear day and you can see this pall of pollution over the city, how much is being filtered out? Do you understand what I'm saying? There's all these other factors, but even there, see, some of us go to work. I know my daughter goes to work. She works in an office all day. She goes to work about 7 in the morning. Stop and think about that in the wintertime. Gets out at 5 or 5:30. Some of you are in the same boat. You're never in the sunshine. You can begin to see why we need to really be aware of this. If there's any chance to walk around a little bit in the middle of the day or something. Somebody read this section. Somebody else. They can keep reading. I don't care. It's okay.
Adequate amounts of vitamin D have increased the prevention of colon cancer by 80% and breast cancer by 50%.
Now that is a significant statistic. 80% of colon cancer, 50% of breast cancer. In a few minutes, again, we're going to see him talk about this on the film, and that is the effect of causes of breast cancer and prostate cancer. But 80%, there's a reason for that. I'm going to show you in just a minute.
Why is there so much talk about sunscreen and, blocking the sun rays if they're saying this is good for you?
Well, some of the sunscreen blocks out the very rays that we need, and some of them don't, and because of skin cancer, the increase of skin cancer, obviously there's a lot of pressure now to make sure. Generally, if you're walking, the time they're talking about here, it's not as big a problem as people that are working all day in the sun or playing golf in the sun or something where they're out in the sun a lot, hours and hours and hours and hours. Well, I'm a prime example. I spent 22 years of teaching, and I taught physical education for a number of years. I didn't wear sunscreen back then, and I'm paying the price. I had cancer cut off my lip here a while back, a basal cell, and back then sunscreens were not a big factor, and we just stayed out all day in the sun, so I don't know too much to comment on that. I mean, I've heard the news talking about that there's, that some are better and some aren't better and those kinds of things. So, yes.
But you say you spend all day in the sun.
Well, I meant hours.
This only calls for 30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I said. I was wrong for doing what I was doing.
4 times a week.
Yeah.
That probably won't cost the
That's why I said that should not the kind of problem normally we're talking about. But I'm talking about where I spend out there 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours in the sun, or farmers sometimes, where, yes, ma'am.
I've heard also that it's better if you can get out before 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
because of the difference.
Certainly the sun rays are, are on a different angle, yes. Oh, I thought you had your hand up. See, I'm virtually blind straight ahead, but my peripheral vision sees all kinds of things move, but I wasn't sure whether your hand went up. Okay, did we read this section? Okay. I was going to explain why. You're going to see this after a while. The vitamin D has been designed to digest the calcium and phosphorus in your intestines. I don't mean digest it, absorb it in your intestines. I'm going to say that again. Vitamin D has been created by God. We know that now, that it absorbs the calcium and phosphorus. That's why I believe that the colon cancer is so great there, because you're not got enough vitamin D for what God intended for us to have. Now, there's the other side of the coin. Remember, we talk about the need of calcium for vitamin D, calcium for bones. And so we used to say 400 international units a day. We said get plenty of milk so you'll have strong bones. We're going to see in a few minutes, I already referred to this, and that is that too much protein pulls calcium out of the bones. And that's a bigger problem probably in osteoporosis than this right here, okay? They're both factors, obviously. Okay, I don't know if I missed something else there. I don't think I did. Okay. All right, I want to move on. This section, I'm not going to spend any time on it, because we, all our life, in Seventh-day Adventists, we have heard and talked about drugs and alcohol. So I don't really need to see anything on this, maybe except the last section here where it says that caffeine is the world's #1 drug. And there is some hidden caffeine out there, and I do want to make a point on this, because I know myself I fell into that trap. I didn't drink caffeinated drinks, but I used to have headaches, and I've since found out, and was smart enough, that I wasn't drinking enough water, but I would take Vanquish. There was a pill, and I had this bottle I'd carried around. My friends would say, "You got your Vanquish with you?" Every afternoon I was getting a headache, I'd take 32 grams or 64 grams of Vanquish, which I did not know that there was 32 grams of caffeine in every one of those pills I was taking. I was getting 64 grams. So I went to a doctor one time, and he said, "Do you take caffeine?" I said, "No, I don't even drink caffeine." And he said, "Well, what about medicine?" When I told him that, he said, "Didn't you know he had caffeine in there? Caffeine's in Excedrin." Didn't realize caffeine was in chocolate. Well, I'm very allergic to caffeine, and so I can't eat chocolate. So I'm sure glad I can eat Cara, because that really helps satisfy that desire for chocolate. But anyway, this one, I think this problem is something we understand. It is hard to break. It took me a while. There was a time when I used to drink caffeinated drinks, and it took me a while to get off of that. So, it's again, analyze your situation. What changes do you need to make? Let's talk about air just very quickly. Again, I don't know, I'd especially like to point this one about deep breathing. I've already talked about it. We are shallow breathers. Think about you're sitting there right now. Probably are just little shallow breaths, because it's indirect. You're not even thinking about it. It naturally happens. And after all, what happens sometimes we do a lot of deep breathing, all of a sudden we feel dizzy. We're not even used to having that much oxygen in our brain. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I exercise. I don't see any need to go into this scientific stuff here. I do want to cover this section now before we go into the film. And have you ever thought about why God created darkness? He didn't have to. He created light to begin with. And yet you say, well, people had to sleep. Well, there's some other reasons, and we're going to look at it right here now. By the way, a few years ago, I brought Dr. Harding in. He was one of the leading experts in the world, Seventh-day Adventist doctor, who did research on sleep. And I had him for camp meeting one year, and he had some very interesting statistics that had been done with airline pilots and people who fly intercontinental flights, and how the rhythms that are messed up with their, you know, I remember being in Toronto for the general conference, and the Korean Airlines stayed in the hotel where I was, and they were coming in there almost all the time, day and night, I guess, and, you know, and I flew to India and the Philippines, and these places were overnight. And these people's sleep patterns are all messed up. And he found out that the pilots really have a lot of problems. Now, as far as the amount of sleep is concerned, he at camp meeting said that too little or too much in relation to 8 hours or 8.5 hours is a factor. In other words, if you sleep 9, it's as bad as if you only sleep 6 or 7. That you need that perfect ratio, and that may vary a little bit with people. I don't want to dwell upon that too much, as I don't want to dwell on the other part, which is the what happens in darkness, and that is, and I've gone too far here, that is the making of melatonin. A few years ago, I brought Dr. Iacono in, who was the world's leading brain surgeon, and he was a Seventh-day Adventist, and he had done extensive research with melatonin. And the body makes serotonin, an element in daytime. We now know that the amount of serotonin that's made is influenced by the amount of melatonin that's made at night. And Dr. Iacono was kind of ahead of his time, and now there's more and more research coming out. But he found out that that any kind of, most of us know that the electromagnetic spectrum has 7 different kinds of rays: ultraviolet rays, gamma rays, light's one of them, those kinds of things. And he found out that if you sleep in a room that has any kind of light, even a little night light or light from outside, it will affect how much melatonin your body makes. And he also said that televisions and or computers that are plugged in your room, not even on, will affect how much melatonin is made. And so then he started doing research. Now he had done, was the first person to reverse 150 cases of Parkinson's. He had done close to 1,000 brain surgeries. At one time he was at Loma Linda, and then he was moving to the University of Mississippi Research Center. And the research he did was very interesting. Just to give you some ideas of how this melatonin works, he came upon the idea that vitamin B6 and melatonin worked together. And so he had a concoction of 200 milligrams of B6 and 30 milligrams of melatonin. He wanted me to take it to see if it would help my eyes. And it didn't, but I tried it, and I noticed it did seem to maybe slide it didn't get as bad as fast as maybe it was happening. But he did some other interesting studies. He had 632 guys with prostate cancer who had been through everything, every chemo and everything. Doctor said nothing else we can do. He put them on that, and every one of them were cured. Years later, they had no more prostate cancer. He did with 1,000 kids that were on Ritalin. All of them were able to be off of Ritalin after a while. He also had 1,000 prisoners in the system in California. And he noticed that it changed their attitudes tremendously. And so this is something that you might want to think about, but listen to me. Do not think about going and taking any kind of herbs without checking with your doctor if you're taking any kind of medications. There can be conflicts between herbs and medicine, okay? If you're going to go to melatonin, and it's okay in reference to what you're already taking, you usually start out with only 3 milligrams and go to 5 or 6. I was only able to build up to 15. That's what I take at night, and you can get the subliminal type that you put in under your tongue. Sublingual type, not subliminal, boy, I mean, does it? Yeah, it's really will help you as far as sleep is concerned, but it also helps make the serotonin really what and serotonin is what affects our moods. You know, sometimes we feel discouraged and we feel, I just don't feel like talking to anybody today. That could come from your physical condition. It could come from a lot of things. But it also could come from the fact that maybe we don't have some of the elements that we need that affects our brain. happy attitudes and things like that. And so that's the I think the important thing as far as sleep is concerned. Are you sleeping in a dark room? Are you do you have some of these extra things going on in your room, like the computers and televisions? Now, obviously, we can be thankful for the fact that God has created a day of rest for us. We certainly understand, and by the way, there's tests. I don't think we put it in here, but they have shown now a number of tests done in two different categories, that people who attend church regularly, different denominations, that are faith-based organizations, they heal. It seems like what? It's very significant from different types of surgeries when they have a faith-based versus no faith in God. I mean, it's like 30 or 40% better, I believe it is. I'm not actually sure of that statistic. I don't remember it. But again, people who go to church on a regular basis, they have more of a positive attitude.